The Divine Arsonist, A Tale of Awakening. Written and read by the author, Jacob Nordby. Chapter 5. I opened my eyes, confused. Morning sunlight was bright on the coffee table, and I struggled to focus my vision by squinting. Without moving, I began to assess my situation. I was warm, and my face was resting on soft, cushiony material. I closed my eyes and drifted for a while. Thought fragments floated around in my brain. Warm. Feels good. Wonder if... What time... What? I must have slept again because the ringing phone lit up my system with adrenaline. I whirled in a tangle of blankets to a sitting position on the couch. Awake. I looked around in a daze. On my couch. The phone kept ringing. Oh yeah, at the cabin, by myself. I had to put both hands down on the cushions to steady myself. My head was spinning. I looked around. I was alone. The phone rang 2 more times and stopped. I blinked my eyes. I didn't want to move, but it seemed right to get on my feet. Standing on shaky legs, I shuffled to the sliding door that led to the back, east-facing deck. The sunshine was brilliant, and the cedar boards were warm under my bare feet. I crossed to the railing and leaned against it. I needed to pee, and did so off the back of the porch. It was a caveman thing to do, but I always enjoyed this little freedom out here in the woods. That morning routine handled, I braced myself against the big pine beam that supported the balcony above me. My eyes were closed, but the light glowed through my eyelids and felt good on my skin. I breathed the morning air. I could smell the mountain laurel and pine needles warming under the sun. Beautiful day. Okay, my mind returned to its inquiry. What happened last night? Oh yes, Lucius. Where was Lucius? The memory of my visitor of the night before woke me up completely. I was alarmed. He had asked me questions, and there was something I needed to decide. I didn't remember making any commitments, had I? I walked quickly back inside and looked around. The house was quiet. I looked out the big front window to the fire pit below. No one out there. Wait. Only one camp chair sat by the cold ashes of last night's blaze. My chair. I went to the kitchen. The empty wine bottle was standing on the countertop. A fly explored the dried residue at the rim. My bowl and glass were in the sink. The soup pan still sat on the stove with just a little congealed dinner left in the bottom. So it looks like I had dinner, all by myself. I opened the dishwasher to check for other dishes. Maybe Lucius was extra tidy. Empty. Immoderate panic seized my body and I struggled to breathe. Stop, this is silly. I put my hand out against the refrigerator and its cool stainless steel surface steadied me. I'm okay. I'll figure this out. The phone started ringing again. I took a deep breath and reached over to grab it off the wall. Hello? Are you okay? My wife asked. She must be calling from the car. I could hear kid noise and the radio in the background. Yeah, I said, lying. How are you, dear? Oh, I'm fine, she said. You didn't call last night, and then I had this strange dream. Just thought I'd check on you. Thanks. Sorry I forgot to call. I slept weird, too. Should I tell her about Lucius? No, better sort that out first for myself. I miss you, she said. The dream I had was of you leaving. It was bizarre because you weren't really gone, but you changed. You were still you, but also someone else. I didn't like it, she said. My mind spun like a top, but I managed to find some comforting words. Well, I'm right here. It's a gorgeous day. I'm going to take a hike and then maybe a nap. Will you be all right? Yeah, she said. We're going to go out a little early to the school yard sale. I think we might go to the park later. Oh, my mom's trying to beep in. I better go. Love you. She was gone. I was relieved. Everything was normal on her end. The dream was a strange coincidence, but she didn't sound too rattled by it. She must have been preoccupied enough to miss the strain in my voice. That was good. I hoped I could gain clarity before I returned home. Glad I didn't try to explain anything to her yet. I stood there in the quiet kitchen for a few minutes. Through the window I took in the mountain landscape basking gloriously in light. A hummingbird flashed into view and hovered for a couple of seconds. It seemed that she was trying to make eye contact with me from the other side of the glass. I smiled at her and nodded. "Hi," I said. She opened her beak and laughed before disappearing with a hum of vibrant joy. Talking to animals, good. Perfectly normal, right? I looked around inside again. From where I stood, I could see evidence only of my presence in the house. One set of dinner dishes. One empty wine bottle. No sound except the ambient house noises and a gentle wind breathing through the pine trees outside. The floor was chilly underfoot. I went to the front door. The rough stone tile gave me a grounded sensation for the first time since I awoke. The door was locked from the inside. Never mind that right now. Out onto the front porch and down the stairs, the sun-warmed planks felt good. I stopped behind my camp chair beside the fire pit and looked around. The coals from last night's blaze had burned down to feathery ashes in the breeze. My red canvas camp chair was sitting alone, exactly where I had unfolded it yesterday afternoon. I squatted and touched the sandy ground with my fingertips. There were plenty of tracks here, but as I scrutinized them, they all appeared to be mine. Inconclusive. You're no Indian scout. The other camp chairs were all stacked under the porch just as they always were. I walked over to look. A fine layer of undisturbed dust covered them. The facts are piling up now, aren't they? A sharp caw, caw sounded behind me, and I whirled and squinted from under my hand into the bright sky. A raven. From the corner of my eye I could see the seat of my camp chair. Something was there. A book? How did I miss that? 3 quick steps and I had it in my hand. It was unusual. The binding and cover were made of supple leather. I turned it over to see the face. It was ornately hand-tooled, and the title, Emerson's Bible, appeared burned in with a hot brand. I held it up close to my eyes and stared at the beautiful work. The borders were embellished with symbols and runes and ancient hieroglyphs. Most were unfamiliar to me, but I recognized a cross and the yin-yang and Thor's hammer. Some of the markings looked like Chinese characters and others were sophisticated knots. It was warm from sitting in the sunlight. I loved books, but handling this one gave me a special thrill. It was alive in my palms. It was tied shut with a ribbon of butter-soft leather. I tugged at one of the ends, and the bow slipped loose. The cover fell open, and a folded piece of notebook paper fell out into the ashes. I tossed the book on the chair and dropped to my knees to rescue the note. Just as I reached for it, a draft stirred the ashes and revived a small ember. The paper fluttered, and its edge caught on the glowing coal. I was moving in a nightmare, never fast enough. In slow motion, I leaned forward and grabbed the smoldering paper just as a flame sprang up on the spiral binding shreds clinging to its edge. I clapped my hands together over the small fire to crush it. My palms were scorched, but when I opened them to look, no real damage had been done. I unfolded the sheet of paper and blew away the ashes. The note was handwritten in blue ink with neat letters, all capitals. I sat down to read. Jacob, thanks for dinner. I'm glad we could finally meet in person. I know you have a lot to consider. Here's the nub. If you decide to accept my invitation, meet me back here next week. Wear your best clothes. I need you to meet some important people if you choose to follow this path. I'll wait for you until 5:30 next Saturday afternoon. If you're not here by then, I will know your decision and you'll never see me again. I'll explain about Emerson's Bible if we meet up next week. Should you decide not to come, burn this book. You won't need it in that case. Otherwise, bring it with you. It will be useful on your journey. Also, this is important. Show it to no one. Until then, or not, Lucius. P.S. Also bring a few of your own favorite books. The ones that have had the most influence on your life so far. So, I wasn't going crazy. Well, maybe I was, but at least I wasn't hallucinating about the visit from Lucius last night. Here was tangible proof. I folded the note and tucked it into my shirt pocket. The book lay shut on my lap. I crossed my hands over it, palms down, and sat. The day was blue, gold, and green, silent too. It seemed like every bird, dog, and tree, even the wind, was holding its breath for a moment. Then, far out across the valley, the raven called. The harsh sound carried to me before I could see the bird that made it. Then it soared into view. Beating its wings in time with my heart, it came to within 50 yards of the lodge and then began to circle our hilltop, counterclockwise. I sat and it disappeared behind me. Back around again, and again, the raven described 3 complete circles before it swooped down and landed on the path near my chair. I had never paid attention to this particular type of bird before, these noisy feathered rats. This one commanded my gaze. Sunbeams gleamed in blue-black shimmers off its wings, and it hopped a few feet closer. It cocked its head rapidly in a pattern of improbable angles, as if to be sure that it saw me with both eyes, to imprint my alien form in its memory. Mission accomplished. It blinked and nodded farewell before springing into flight. "Caw, caw," it said. I was sure it looked back as it flew away from me. I nodded my silent agreement. Caw, caw, caw. The book was open in my lap and I picked it up. What's in here? I held the spine in my left hand and used my right fingers to flutter through the pages quickly. There was little text and a lot of empty space in the first third of the book. The rest of the pages were blank. Returning to the first page, under a faded black and white copy of a daguerreotype image was an inscription that read, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put rout to all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms." Henry David Thoreau. The antique picture was of the stalwart, whiskered philosopher himself. It honestly came as no great shock to me reading that quote. The last 24 hours had held so many coincidences and otherworldly surprises that this synchronicity was perfectly congruent. I shook my head and accepted it with barely a trace of resistance. Well, I'm here in the woods now, I thought. Thoreau would be so proud. Turning a few pages, I saw but did not read more quotes with many empty lines beneath them. This must be a journal of some kind. Lucius said that it would be useful on your journey. I would hold him to his promise to explain next week. "So you've decided to go already?" an internal voice asked. "Who knows? I need to think about it," I thought. "I'm going crazy," I muttered. The rest of that day is hard to remember. I sat in the chair for hours in a hypnotic daze. The sun was warm. I dozed on and off. From time to time, animals ventured out of the brush and crossed in front of me. I sat still as a stone, so they must not have experienced their usual fear of humans. I could only muster the energy to watch them from between heavy eyelids. A large elk, a coyote, 2 jackrabbits, and a family of wild turkeys all took turns staring at me curiously, then disappearing into the woods. Finally, in the late afternoon, just before the sun disappeared, pain in my stiff muscles and the chilly temperature roused me. I dragged myself inside to discover that I was ravenous but lacked the motivation or focus to cook. I made do with a glass of water and 2 or 3 handfuls of granola from the cupboard. Although I had slept most of the day, deep fatigue wrapped me up once more. I barely got out of my clothes and into one of the beds before somersaulting into the black universe of dreams.